I think since COVID, we've had a lot of kind of buyers from the city, from eastern parts of, the state, coming out here looking for houses, right?
Yeah, it's been the common theme. I think at the open houses, we've seen probably at least 50% of people are coming from Queens, Brooklyn, Long Island, Staten Island. Everybody's just migrating away from the city.
Totally. Yeah. And, there's, it's interesting because a lot of them that are coming from more non-rural areas out to these parts like Sussex County, Orange County, they are not familiar with private utilities.
Yeah.
Right.
It's usually a big shock with them when you tell them, hey, there's a septic, there's no sewer. They go, where does it go?
Yeah.
What is that?
What do you mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we figured let's talk about that a little bit today because a lot of people don't understand the nuance of what it is.
Right. Yeah.
Even like from the water system, right? From wells, like the water comes from your own ground.
Yeah. It comes from the earth as opposed to like a treatment plant somewhere, down the road.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly. But, I think there's a lot of benefits and a lot of cons to having private utilities or public utilities at that.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the kind of big things that I hear from buyers is, well, a septic system could be so much money. And that's true. A septic system, depending on the type of soil you have, depending on how much excavation is needed, the bedroom count size could range on the low end from 25 to 30 grand. And I've seen it go north of 50 grand.
Sure.
So, but I think what people don't take in consideration is that you got to come up with that up front, but septic systems can last, some can last 25, 30 plus years if maintained well.
Chances are you're probably not going to be in the house. Most people aren't going to be in a house for 30 years.
Sure. Yeah, but if you paid a sewer fee to a city for 30 years, you'd probably come close to what the cost is for a new septic system anyway.
Yeah.
And so you are paying for sewage one way or another, whether it's public or whether it's private, but there's some nuance there in regards to that.
Right. Yeah, and even with the wells too, I mean, like you were touching on, it's the same thing. I mean, a well pump, might cost you between 5 and 10 grand or whatever, depending. And, if you have to pay a quarterly or a monthly, water bill, it could be just as costly over the same amount of time.
For sure. Yeah. And I have a lot of like owners and buyers, sellers that prefer well water because it is coming from the ground. There's municipal water goes through a treatment process. A lot of them add like chlorination and fluoride to the water. Your private well is not going to have that in it. Yep. You might have other issues though, right? You might have bacteria in the water. You might have high levels of some type of mineral like lead or magnesium.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of things that, when you purchase a house, you'll see the amount of things that are tested in the water, and some things I never even knew existed that they test for. And it's on you, the homeowner or the seller, whoever's, however it's negotiated, is you have to put in the treatment, you have to put in the softener, the filters, you got to shock the water. It's on you as the homeowner.
Yeah. And not only that, like you have to provide that passing test too. So you also have to incur the cost of the testing of the well, which currently is close to $1,000.
Right.
So that's a big cost. But as the buyer, for somebody buying a property, that gives you peace of mind that primary and secondary standards, ones that'll potentially can be lethal if ingested, like, or cause serious illness, or even ones that over time can cause illness, the water is going to be delivered clean.
Right.
So that's really nice too. Now it varies from state to state, right? In Jersey, that's very common. In New York, the analysis of the water a lot of times falls on the buyer. So it really depends, but that's another nuanced system. And with water, there's a ton of these different systems like you were mentioning. There's softener systems, there's UV systems, there's neutralizers for pH level. When you have public water, sure, you can put on a softener, but that's pretty much all you need. Maybe if you want to take out the like chlorination, you can put like a carbon filter on there or something like that.
Right, but it's minimal.
Minimal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas I've seen well systems with 4 to 5 different treatment systems on the water. So
Yeah.
it's this kind of like give and take, you know, it's good, but then you also got to worry about the well pump like you were talking about.
Right.
You know, it's a motor that doesn't last forever, and that has to be changed sometimes. How deep is your well, you know? Well, let's talk about this. I get this a lot, which is people that are familiar with wells asking me like, well, what happens when the well dries up?
Right. Yeah, it's a common, you know, that's a common question for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
And I personally haven't seen that happen much, and I don't think it is a very common thing, but it does happen. But it's quite uncommon, and I think that's one of those things that you read online that scares you.
Sure.
Because drilling a new well isn't cheap.
Right. Yeah, it can happen. I mean, someone could have done their job incorrectly, or maybe not realized how little the water supply was when they were initially doing it. And
sure.
some people do end up having to put in a second well, but like you said, it's everybody in northern New Jersey, you know, even southern New York. The majority of people have wells. Chances are,
if you're in a rural area, for
Right.
sure, it's
Yeah.
super common. So, you know, those are some of the kind of nuance with septic and wells. Now, another thing that's usually very uncommon for people coming from, you know, more urbanized or developed areas out to a more rural area is private fuel systems.
right? It's on you. You're self-contained.
Yeah, there's no natural gas coming in through the street.
Yeah.
I'll get commonly people will say, all right, but I'll just connect to the natural gas. I'm like, no, there's no natural gas at all.
No, you're on a mountain.
Yeah.
You're not, yeah.
Right.
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 You know, and it's something they got to adjust to, because then they go into like, well, how do I fuel my house, and how much does it cost? And you know, it's you know, in today's day, it's not cheap.
Yeah.
You know, but
Yeah, and oil usually fluctuates with the gas of price, the price of gases as well. So when gas is high, oil is high, and it's pretty high right now. So we're feeling it. But you know, there's more nuance in that too, because what a lot of people don't understand is that when you have like a gas boiler or furnace versus an oil one, the actual mechanicals tend to last longer on gas fuel sources versus oil fuel sources because of the nature of oil, with it, you know, having, you know, more carcinogens and stuff like that. So your boiler that might last 50 years, if maintenance really good on a gas system, might only last 20 years
right.
on an oil system. So there's some nuance there, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there is natural gas in some places in our areas, you know.
sure.
I mean, they are starting to be a little more prevalent with bringing it about, I think.
Yeah.
But it is still very, you know, an uncommon thing unless you're in a condominium or, you know, center of town, something
Right,
like that.
right. And usually what's cool, one thing that I notice is like when I start to see, they'll usually start with like one thing, like a water line to a house or to a neighborhood. And then that'll be proof of concept that they can run a line, and then they might add a natural gas line.
Right.
Usually the last thing is the sewer, because it's a way bigger pipe. There's way more involved than just, you know, a small water line or a small gas line. But that's usually something good when you start to see those utilities come. They usually come one at a time. Possibly in the next 10 years, you might get all of them, you know, over that course of time. Not guaranteed, but it does show that they can run something to the house. Whereas some of these sections that we sell houses in, they're never getting anything.
Yeah.
Because it's up a mountain.
Yeah,
Right.
And it is the same trade-off, though. You know, as we talked about the water and the sewer. I mean, your fuel, if you have natural gas coming in, it's another fee that's paid. And you know, when you balance it out, I mean, is oil or propane? That's the other thing
For
too,
sure.
which is still kind of expensive. But you know, you average it out. Are you really spending that much more versus your bill? You know?
It really, I think it's seasonally based and how savvy you are with it.
Yep.
Like me personally, one of the houses I have is on oil, one's on natural gas. The one on oil, I would always make sure to shop the oil companies.
Yep.
I would also buy when it was summertime, because that's typically when it's the lowest. Sometimes you got to fill a couple times a year. So you can be savvy about it. The other thing that's very common out here is people offsetting their heat bills with pellet stoves and wood stoves and electric stoves.
Yeah, especially if you have like a 2 or 3 family, something minimal. I mean,
Right.
a wood stove would you'd have to open windows sometimes in the wintertime because of how
For
hot
sure.
it is.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, all in all, you know, I've moved out to these rural parts roughly 10 years ago, and it was foreign to me as well. But now it's very common, and I feel like it's very normal. And sure, public utilities, are they nice? Absolutely. Is it that much of a difference in lifestyle or finances? I don't think so, but to some it may be. I think you get savvy when you have it and you figure out how to work around and make it as you know, financially okay for you as possible.
Right.
You know?
And I mean, somebody that we have under contract now, you know, if you have the right team on your side, you can get a brand new septic like our clients are getting in the transaction too. So it's a cost you don't incur, and it's something that'll probably outlive your time in the house.
Most likely, yeah.
So it's case by case, but you know.
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely a lot of workarounds, and you know, nothing to be too fearful of. I think that's kind of the big message here. Is like, you know, don't be too worried about it. You know, you just got to know somebody that understands it, that can explain it to you, and really, there's not much to worry about.